Step onto a quiet British street in the mid-1950s, and you'd witness a scene that feels almost unbelievable now. Children ran barefoot across warm pavements, weaving between milk floats and delivery vans without a hint of worry. Fathers cycled home from work in flat caps and open coats, no helmets in sight, while mothers left prams outside the local shop, trusting the world to watch over their sleeping babies. It wasn't considered risky or reckless. It was simply life as everyone knew it. And that's what makes it so striking today. What we now see as hazards were once ordinary moments stitched into everyday routine. Most people have forgotten just how different these streets looked, how free and unregulated they felt. Yet these small, familiar habits defined a generation. To understand why, we need to look a little closer at the Britain that shaped them. To understand why these unusual traditions felt so normal, we have to step back into the Britain of the early 1950s. The war had ended less than a decade earlier, yet its shadow still stretched across everyday life. Rationing had only just wound down, bomb sites dotted city streets, and many families were rebuilding their lives from the ground up. Money was tight, luxuries were rare, and people relied more on each other than on any official system. Communities were close-knit because they had to be. Neighbors shared tools, watched over one another's children, and trusted that everyone was doing their best in tough circumstances. Safety standards were almost an afterthought. Few questioned whether playgrounds were dangerous or whether a bicycle needed protective gear. Independence wasn't a choice. It was a necessity born from long hours, limited resources, and a cultural belief that children should learn by doing. Back then, these behaviors weren't seen as risky or irresponsible. They were simply the rhythm of daily life. And it was this blend of resilience, trust, and post-war practicality that shaped so many customs we now view with disbelief. Tradition number 1. Children left outside shops in prams. It's almost impossible to imagine today, but in the 1950s, it was perfectly normal to see a row of prams lined up outside a shop while mothers nipped inside for groceries or a quick chat. The gentle rattle of pushchair wheels on the pavement, the soft creak of springs, and the steady rise and fall of a sleeping baby were familiar sounds on any high street. Fresh air was considered essential, almost medicinal, and many parents genuinely believed that a bit of outdoor breeze made children stronger. Nobody hovered anxiously or worried about pram theft. The community itself acted as a watchful guardian. Contrast that with today's world of baby monitors, car seat checks, and safeguarding rules. Leaving a child alone, even for a moment, would draw instant concern and possibly a police visit. Modern anxieties, stricter laws, and shifting parenting norms have made this once unremarkable habit unthinkable. Yet to those who lived it, it was simply a small act of trust, woven into daily life. And that trust shaped many other freedoms children experienced back then. Tradition number 2, barefoot summers and playing in the streets. Do you remember those endless summer days when time seemed to stretch forever? In the 1950s, children spilled out of their front doors after breakfast and often weren't seen again until the evening meal. Barefoot and carefree, they darted through streets, climbed trees high enough to make any modern parent wince, and cycled for miles without a helmet in sight. Streams became makeshift adventure parks, building sites turned into secret kingdoms, and the only rule was to be home before dark. There was an intoxicating freedom to it all, but also a surprising amount of danger. Roads were busier than we imagine, building foundations were rarely fenced off, and first aid kits were more suggestion than necessity. Yet children learned resilience through bumps, scrapes, and the occasional telling off from a neighbor who felt just as responsible as a parent. Today, safeguarding laws, traffic concerns, and cultural anxieties make that level of independence almost impossible. Modern childhood feels more supervised, more structured, more cautious. But those who lived it still remember the thrill of running wild, carried by a freedom that defined an entire generation. Tradition number 3. School discipline that would get teachers fired today. Step inside a 1950s classroom and you enter a world that feels astonishingly strict by today's standards. The echo of wooden floors, the smell of chalk dust, and the stern gaze of a headmaster all set the tone for a discipline system that would be unthinkable now. The cane and the slipper were routine punishments, administered without hesitation for talking back, missing homework, or even poor handwriting. A dunce cap placed on a child's head, or being made to stand in front of the class, was considered character building rather than cruel. Morning inspections ensured uniforms were immaculate, shoes polished, and hair neatly in place. Teachers held complete authority, and few parents questioned their methods. Back then, structure and obedience were seen as essential parts of growing up, shaped by a society still recovering from war and hardship. Today's safeguarding rules, psychological research, and cultural expectations have transformed classrooms entirely. Corporal punishment is banned, shaming tactics are unacceptable, and discipline focuses on well-being rather than fear. It's a stark reminder of just how dramatically the school environment has evolved. Tradition number 4. Smoking everywhere, even around children. It's difficult to picture now, but for much of the 1950s, cigarette smoke was simply part of the air everyone breathed. Step into a pub, and you'd find a thick, swirling haze drifting above the bar. Buses carried passengers wrapped in smoke. Offices held meetings through a fog of half-finished cigarettes, and many families thought nothing of lighting up at the dinner table. Even hospitals weren't free from it. Nurses pushed trolleys past ashtrays, and visitors smoked freely beside recovering patients. Doctors appeared on posters endorsing particular brands, their reassuring smiles suggesting cigarettes were not only harmless, but sophisticated. Children grew up surrounded by this cloud, absorbing the scent of tobacco as naturally as the smell of Sunday roast. Today, the contrast is astonishing. Smoking is banned in restaurants, workplaces, trains, and even cars carrying children. Public health campaigns and strict laws have pushed smoke out of almost every shared space. In truth, the air quality of a 1950s pub would be illegal on its own today. And yet, for those who lived through it, that smoky world was simply everyday life. Tradition number 5. Workplace hazards we can't imagine now. Walk into a British factory or building site in the 1950s, and you'd enter a world that feels shockingly unprotected by today's standards. Machines rattled and roared without safety guards, sparks flew freely from workshop tools, and men worked beneath towering scaffolds with no hard hats in sight. In mines, dust hung thick in the air, mixing with the ever-present risk of collapse, while asbestos, now recognized as deadly, was handled casually, woven into walls, pipes, and insulation as if it were just another harmless material. Workers accepted danger as part of the job. It wasn't bravado, it was simply the reality of providing for a family in a country still finding its footing after the war. Protective goggles, ear defenders, high-visibility jackets, these were luxuries few had even heard of. Today, workplace risk assessments, safety training, and strict regulations shape every industry. Hard hats are compulsory, machinery is carefully shielded, and hazardous materials are tightly controlled. Looking back, it's astonishing how much people endured with so little protection. And yet, these conditions forged a generation known for grit and determination. Tradition number 6. Milk floats, glass bottles, and the dawn chorus routine. If there's one sound that instantly transports people back to the 1950s, it's the gentle clink of glass milk bottles arriving at dawn. Before most households stirred, the milkman's electric float hummed softly along the street, gliding from doorstep to doorstep with a calm familiarity that felt almost comforting. Neighbors, wrapped in dressing gowns, often exchanged a quiet morning greeting as they collected their bottles, still cool from the early air and topped with a foil cap that curious birds sometimes pecked through. In-doorstep delivery wasn't just a service, it was part of the daily rhythm, a small ritual that reminded communities they were connected. But as supermarkets expanded and hygiene regulations tightened, the system changed. Concerns over contamination, stricter rules on packaging, and the convenience of long-life cartons gradually pushed glass bottles aside. Today, the milk float has become a rare sight, yet its soft morning music still echoes warmly in the memories of those who lived it. Looking back on these traditions, it's natural to wonder whether people were genuinely tougher in the 1950s, or whether life simply demanded a different kind of bravery. Many who grew up in that era remember a childhood shaped by independence. Long walks to school, scraped knees, and a quiet expectation to get on with things. Yet it wasn't just physical resilience that defined the time. It was the emotional steadiness that came from trusting neighbors, relying on community, and learning from small daily challenges. Danger was present, certainly, but it wasn't exaggerated or constantly analyzed. People accepted risk as part of life, not something to be eliminated. Today, our world feels safer, yet more anxious. We have rules, regulations, and technologies that protect us, but we've lost some of the easy trust that once bound streets and families together. Perhaps that's why these memories spark such strong emotions. They remind us of a Britain where resilience grew quietly through routine, not through grand gestures. And in reflecting on that past, we see how these customs shaped a generation known for its steadiness, humor, and remarkable sense of community. When we look back at these forgotten traditions, it becomes clear that they shaped far more than daily routines. They shaped the character of a generation. A Britain built on resilience, quiet independence, and an unspoken sense of community. Many of these habits would be illegal or unthinkable now, yet they left behind values that still echo through families, memories, and stories passed around kitchen tables. In recognizing how much life has changed, we're also reminded of what made those years so defining. If you lived through any of these moments, share your memories below, and subscribe for more British nostalgia.